My name is Rahul Budhraja. I'm with the Nielsen Company. I'm a part of the marketing effectiveness practice. And today I'm going to talk about how companies can unlock marketing efficiencies through the deployment of market mix modeling. How many of you have heard of market mix modeling? Excellent. So just a little background on marketing mix modeling. Market mix modeling actually began in the fast moving consumer good industry. Started out in the early 90s. And for the longest time, it was primarily restricted to fast moving consumer goods because there was a lot of data available. And in the past 5 to 10 years, we've seen marketing mix now being leveraged in other industries as well. So automotive companies, pharmaceutical companies, financial services companies, including insurance, are now leveraging the power of marketing mix to optimize marketing budget. So let's start with the marketer's challenge, and Colin, I think you will relate to this as well. So there's increasing pressure on marketers today to make decisions quickly in an environment where marketing costs are increasing because of media inflation and marketing budgets are shrinking. There's also been a proliferation of a lot of media vehicles, in addition to TV and print and outdoor. Today there are so many types of digital, viral, experiential vehicles which have caused fragmentation of audience and an environment where the consumer is in control. So the challenge for marketers today is how do you make timely, confident, and efficient marketing investments within this environment? So how do some of the leading companies address these challenges? Right? First and foremost, they have a robust and a consistent measurement of marketing activities through the deployment of marketing mix models. Right? Once they have these insights from marketing mix, they embed these insights into their planning process. In fact, we have clients that don't make decisions on marketing investments without marketing mix models. And there are companies that have a very wide footprint across geographies. Companies have a very wide portfolio of products. Great Eastern has a number of products. Now, it's not feasible for a company to run market mix models on every product in every market. So some of these leading companies are using the information that they have on marketing mix and creating business principles that they can then scale across the organization. Because at the end of the day, increasing efficiency of marketing spend will help fund future growth opportunities. So how does this work? It's a 3-step process. Step 1 is to discover what works. So essentially, market mix modeling quantifies the impact of each marketing activity on a key performance indicator, right? And so let's say in insurance business, the key performance indicator could be number of policies issued, or it could be the request for quotes. A key output of marketing mix is the effectiveness and the return on investment for each marketing activity. Right? So that's the final outcome of a market mix model, which is what's the return on investment for each marketing activity that I'm investing behind. Once you have this information, then you would obviously want to invest more on activities that are generating a higher ROI and pare back your spending on activities that have a lower ROI. Right? The next step would be to plan smarter. So you would leverage these insights into the planning process. Again, as I mentioned, you would spend more on activities with higher ROI and less on the ones with lower ROI. The objective here would be to optimize your marketing spend. And the next step, or the third step, is to monitor and adjust. So once you've actually used these insights for planning, you can generate a forecast as well based on these insights. And then it's important to track how you are doing versus the plan. Are there any gaps? What's driving the gaps? And what measures you can take to close the gap? So in a nutshell, this is essentially how market mix modeling works. And I'll actually talk through this in a little more detail as I go through the subsequent slides. So let's first look at discovering what works. So how do we do it, right? Essentially, market mix modeling leverages historical data, typically 2 to 3 years of historical data. You would first identify a product, and let's say, life insurance is the product that's been chosen. You would then identify a KPI, a key performance indicator that you want to evaluate. Let's assume the KPI is number of policies issued, right? So you would pull historical data on that particular KPI, which is number of policies issued, and let's say, let's assume this is the trend that you have over the last 2 years for that particular KPI, number of policies issued. Now you will see spikes and you will see dips in the data, because in certain weeks you will sell more policies, in other weeks not as many. We also then line up all the activities, both marketing and non-marketing activities that have happened historically in support of this KPI. All right, so marketing activities would be investments in TV advertising, print advertising, out-of-home sponsorship, so on and so forth. Non-marketing activities would be economy, macro factors, because if macroeconomic factors drive your KPI, then you should be evaluating the impact of those as well. And again, just as your KPI has, peaks and valleys, the marketing and non-marketing activities will have peaks and valleys as well. We then deploy econometric modeling, regression models, multiple regression models, which analyzes the peaks and valleys of your KPI against the peaks and valleys of your marketing and non-marketing activities. And it decomposes the KPI into, let's say the number of policies that were driven by each marketing activity. So here you could see we are able to decompose this KPI into how much of it is actually driven by TV versus print versus online, and how much is core. Core is also known as baseline. So this is essentially policies that you would sell regardless of any marketing activity. So if you had no marketing activities in the past couple of years, you would still sell policies, because you're a recognized brand name, people would still sign up. So Great Eastern will still sell policies. So this is what we call the core or the baseline, and the rest is actually incremental, because the idea of spending behind marketing is to generate incremental sales or policies. And you can then decompose what is the contribution of each marketing activity. So once you have this information, because this is sort of the key output from a model, then you could decompose the contribution of each marketing activity, and then also look at how much is actually baseline or core. Also, if this is last 2 years of data, I can actually split this into two, and we can then analyze what are the key drivers of change in number of policies issued. Right? So let's say these were the policies issued in year 1, these were the policies issued in year 2. Through marketing mix, you can actually then pinpoint what are the positive drivers of change and what are the negative drivers of change. Right? Again, a very critical output of a marketing mix. I mean, today, if you were to talk to a marketer and ask them what are the reasons behind increase or decline in sales, they would tend to speculate. But through this, you can actually pinpoint what are the key drivers of change in sales. So what are the key drivers of sales or policies issued, as well as change in sales or policies issued. So again, this, with this information, what is the number of policies that's being driven by each activity. And any company knows how much they've spent on the activity, so you can calculate the return on investment. So in a given week, if we sold 100 policies, let's say 80 were baseline, so I would have sold that regardless, and 10 were actually driven by TV. I know I can translate that into dollar sales or dollar revenue. I could divide that by the investment I've made on TV, and that gives me the ROI for TV. Likewise, I could calculate the ROI for each marketing activity, and then this becomes the basis of making a decision. So again, you would invest more on activities that have a higher ROI and pare back on the ones with a lower ROI. So this is a framework that we often use to provide recommendations to clients. And let me first orient you to this chart. So on the horizontal axis here is the contribution of each marketing activity. right? So it goes from low to high. And on the vertical axis, you've got the return on investment for each marketing activity. Again, goes from low to high. This chart is a little messed up. This here should be within this quadrant. So I guess something happened there in formatting. And the size of the bubble out here reflects the size of investment on each activity, right? And you could see that there should be 4 quadrants out here. So this, if you look at this quadrant, you have terrestrial TV, which is essentially network TV. So there is sizable investment that has been made in this illustration on terrestrial TV. The contribution of TV is pretty high, but the return on investment is rather low, right? So the recommendation that we are making to activities that fall in this quadrant is you need to optimize this because it's driving your KPI, but not doing it well enough. If you look at this quadrant out here, you've got activities where the contribution is low and the ROI is also low. So you would shift out of these activities. Here, for instance, online, you've got a low contribution because the spending on online is low, but the ROI is pretty high. So you would actually invest more here. And this is the ideal scenario. So cable TV out here has high contribution, high ROI, so you want to sustain, right? So this is sort of the framework that is often used to provide recommendations. Now, we often will get challenged by our clients. All right, Rahul, you're telling me to optimize TV. How do I do it, right? That's where we actually get into the deep dives. So we could do a deep dive on each marketing activity. What I have here is an illustration just for TV, but this could be done across other media activities or non-media activities as well. So essentially through marketing mix, you can quantify the impact of TV year over year. So what % of your policies issued is being driven by TV in year 1 versus year 2? What's the ROI in year 1 versus year 2, right? You can evaluate the effectiveness of each campaign. You know, you may have had several different campaigns on TV in the past couple of years. So you can evaluate which campaign is the most effective, which ones should you be repeating going forward. We can provide recommendations on what's the optimal level of support you should have on TV. As you may know, media has saturation. So if you actually have too much media, eventually, there will be diminishing returns, and then there will come a point where you're just saturated. So it's just money down the drain. You'd rather take that money and invest in other activities. So through marketing mix deep dives, you can actually provide insights on what's the optimal range of support, GRPs in this case, you should be flighting. There are insights that can be provided on what's the flighting strategy. Should you have continuous support or should you pulse your TV? What's the day parts? Should you be advertising in the morning, afternoon, evening, night? Which one is more effective, more efficient? Prime time, non-prime time? 30-second spots, 15-second spots? What's the optimal mix? Because if you look at 30-second spots, they are effective, but they're also very expensive, so they are less efficient. So there are recommendations that can be provided on what's the optimal mix. And also, what's the optimal reach and frequency? How many times should you be airing a copy? Right? Because there's something known as copy wear out. If you see the same copy or same ad a number of times, it just wears out. It doesn't move the needle. So this, again, is an illustration of the deep dives that can be done on TV. However, you could do this across all media vehicles as long as data is available, right? So it could be done on digital, where you can look at sites by type. You can look at different types of social media, how effective they are. In magazine, again, by different genres, you could look at full page ad, half page ad, color ad, print, black and white ad, so on and so forth. Likewise, for sponsorships, for events that insurance companies hold, how effective are they? So you can evaluate all of these in a fairly granular detail as long as the data is available. So that's how you would actually then provide insights on how you can optimize the ROIs for these activities. The next few slides, I actually have an illustration of some of the recommendations, that are made. Again, this is at a very high level. One of our clients, was airing between 4,000 and 6,000 GRPs a month on TV, and the analysis suggested that they were way past the saturation point. So they were not getting anything incremental out of it. So the recommendation was you need to pull back, and this is the recommended range, 1,700 to 2,200 GRP. So there was money to be saved there and money to be reinvested in other activities. Now, during festive seasons, everybody advertises, so the share of voice becomes important. And so the recommendation was that during festive seasons, when there is a lot of advertising on TV, you shouldn't stick to this, you should actually dial up. So this becomes sort of the recommended range of support of GRPs. We also made recommendations on what's the optimal proportion of 15-second spots versus 30-second spots. So here the recommendation was, go with between 40 to 60% of 15-second spots. So pull back on 30 seconds because those are expensive. Billboard and print advertising was working reasonably well for this client. The ROIs were healthy, so the recommendation was continue investing in billboard or out of home and print. Online was returning a very high ROI for the clients, so we said invest more in online. Radio wasn't working for them, so we said kill radio. Right? So again, at a very high level, recommendations on optimizing the marketing spend. So on this slide, what I have is just some business questions that a market mix model can help address. Again, this isn't meant to be comprehensive in any way. It's just gives you a flavor for types of questions it can address. Which marketing tactics are the most profitable? We talked about that because marketing mix gives you ROIs on each tactic. What are the recommended spend levels by media vehicle? We've talked about saturation on different media vehicles. So what is the suggested spend level? How does marketing contribution vary by product? So marketing activities that work on life insurance may not necessarily work on accident insurance or health insurance, right? So if we evaluate different products, we can identify which marketing activities are best suited for which product. Not only product, you can actually look at consumer segments as well. If you have different consumer segments, you can then evaluate which marketing activities work better with certain consumer segments. Did the ad campaign focused on one product line drive incremental sales on any other products? This is also known as a halo effect, right? If you have 10 different products in your portfolio, you can't advertise all 10 products. You may advertise one product, but you may want to know what is the impact of that advertising on other products in your portfolio. So that's what we call the halo effect. Which social media tactics contributed most to incremental sales, right? So you can evaluate Facebook, blogs, Twitter, so on and so forth. What's the ROI on each of these? Which TV campaign from the past year was the most profitable? I talked about that. Are TV support levels approaching saturation? And so those is again just to give you a flavor of some of the questions that can be addressed. And the focus there was more on TV, but you could do that for all other marketing activities as well. So now we are on to the second step. So what we've done so far is, I've given you an overview of methodology, how it works. I've given you an overview of what are some of the key deliverables, how you could do deep dives into each of those activities and provide recommendations and optimization. Once all of those insights are made available, then the next step is to incorporate that in the planning process. And there are tools available that you can leverage for simulation and forecasting, because at the end of the day, you want to then leverage this information to find out what's the impact on your KPI. So we, for instance, at Nielsen, we do have a web-based tool that our clients use. This tool actually helps you run simulations, so you can allocate or reallocate spending across different marketing buckets, and it will tell you what's the impact on top line, bottom line. If you don't want to do manual simulations, you can actually use an optimization feature here, where you can just tell the tool, okay, here's my marketing budget, give me the best allocation across all of these marketing activities. This also has a very interactive dashboard. So, these are all of the these are all of the marketing activities. So you can actually use the sliding scale and you can increase or decrease the spend levels across these marketing activities. And you can see what's the impact on your top line and bottom line. At the same time, these are the saturation curves that I was talking about that can be created for each media vehicle. And as you increase or decrease spend across these marketing activities, it'll tell you where you are on that saturation curve. So again, if you are right up here on the saturation curve, it means that there's no point increasing the spend on those activities because it's not going to move the needle. So that's how you would actually put these insights into action. And this tool can also generate forecasts, leveraging market mix insights. So the next step would be to monitor and adjust, right? So once you've generated a forecast for number of policies that are going to be issued for the next year or 2 years, you now want to track the actuals versus the plan. And essentially, there are tools that will help you track the variance versus the forecast, and you can then probe into what's driving the variance. Which of these marketing activities is not working, so that you can go back and address or plug the gaps. So as a company, we've actually done about 10,000 market mix modeling projects across a whole host of industries. In fact, at Nielsen, we have a normative database that we've created for different verticals, for different activities. And these are some of the benefits and value that companies can derive, and this is sort of based upon our experience. So companies on average we've seen have realized incremental 10% growth in top line by deploying market mix modeling. Bottom line improvements of anywhere between 3 to 5% through more effective and efficient spending. The marketing financial return on investment on the activities can increase by 10 to 20%. You have visibility into what's driving sales. You know exactly what's driving your sales or whatever your KPI is, and what's actually driving the change in your KPI. And now with the availability of tools, this becomes a lot more real time. So you have insights, quicker access to insights, and there's more informed decision making, obviously. So I want to wrap by sharing with you a case study. This is a project that we had delivered to one of the largest insurance companies in the US. In terms of the scope, the product that they wanted us to evaluate was auto insurance. And they had 2 KPIs they wanted us to assess. One was the number of quotations received, and then also the number of new policies issued. So it was essentially inquiries and conversion. Those were sort of the 2 KPIs that they wanted us to evaluate. Now, this particular company was spending a boatload of money on marketing. Anywhere they'd spend between $500 million to $750 million on marketing across a whole host of activities. And so they wanted to know what's working, what's not working, for each of these KPIs. In terms of the outcome, we were able to quantify the efficiency of each of these marketing activities, and this is across both the KPIs. And what you're seeing out here is a rank order in terms of efficiency. So the blue bars out here is the efficiency of marketing activities for, this is for conversion or for policies issued, and this is for inquiries. And this is expressed, the efficiency is expressed in terms of cost per each incremental KPI. So for instance, what this suggests is that direct mail was the most efficient marketing activity because it cost only 30 cents to generate 1 incremental policy, whereas sponsorship was the least efficient because it cost $7 to generate 1 incremental policy. Right, that's in terms of policies issued. If you look at inquiries, again, direct mail was the most efficient, 40 cents for each incremental inquiry that was generated, whereas Yellow Pages was the least efficient, $6, right? And again, if you look across, you'll see that there were differences in terms of what's working for inquiries versus policies issued. So one of the key takeaways was that radio and TV, for instance, were far more efficient for generating inquiries. So you could see that these numbers, radio is 0.8 out here, it's 1 here. TV is 0.9, it's 1.7. So radio and TV are more efficient for generating inquiries, which is intuitive as well, because radio and TV creates awareness, and that leads to inquiries. Whereas online display and outdoor advertising was found to be a lot more efficient for issuing policies or for conversion, right? So that was sort of the key takeaway out here. And so this particular client is leveraging these insights in optimizing their marketing budget. And we've actually gone ahead and done another piece of analysis for this client where we've looked at different consumer segments. They've asked us for insights on what marketing activities are more impactful in general population versus Hispanic population. So that's another layer of modeling that we've done to give them those insights so that they can optimize their marketing budget across those segments.